Hi, Sachsenhausen, Kolonia Gwarna, Parna, Germania richtig dicker Heil, Sachsenhausen. Wiertycie jak bambusik, trupie łebki to kaktusy heil. Es lebe Kultur Kampf.
Welcome to Descendant Stuff, a podcast by and for the descendants of Sachsenhausen prisoners, working together to uncover the unanswered questions of its history. Sachsenhausen was a Nazi concentration camp located in Oranienburg, Germany, used from 1936 through April 1945. It was used as a labor camp, with a network of subcamps and worksites around the region, as well as a prison camp, death camp, medical experimentation center, and SS training ground. It was also the administrative center for all Nazi concentration camps. We are Jakob, Kelsey, and Nicole, three descendants of Sachsenhausen prisoners. Though our relatives were imprisoned for different reasons, we've discovered we have much in common. In each episode, we interview other descendants, researchers, and even survivors, sharing stories, memories, and research to build a clearer picture of the past, one that goes beyond the records. Through these conversations, we honor those who suffered and died at Sachsenhausen and strengthen our collective understanding of our own ancestors' experiences. This episode was recorded during the commemoration for the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Sachsenhausen in our podcast studio in Tower A, with special assistance from the Sachsenhausen Memorial and Museum. This interview is about Karl Schirdewan. Karl was born in 1907 in Stettin, Germany, and was a German communist activist, remaining active in the illegal Communist Party after the Nazis came to power in 1933. He was arrested in 1934, sentenced to prison for so-called conspiracy of high treason, and later placed in protective custody. He spent most of the Nazi era imprisoned in concentration camps, including Sachsenhausen and Flossenbürg, until he was liberated by U.S. forces in April 1945 during a forced march. Karl died July 14, 1998 in Potsdam, Germany, at the age of 91. Today, Jakob Feistauer is speaking with Alexander Schirdewan, Karl's grandson.
My name is Alexander Schirdewan, and I'm the grandson of Karl Schirdewan, who was a prisoner in Sachsenhausen.
So you're a direct descendant of a prisoner of the concentration camp of Sachsenhausen. We're sitting here in Tower A, and underneath us is the gate to the former concentration camp where the famous Arbeit macht frei letters are placed. And we're on the second floor, and we have an overview above the whole campsite. You agreed that we could have a little talk about your grandfather, who used to be here. So what do you know about him?
Actually, he died when I was like 12 or 11 years old. So I met him and even went to Sachsenhausen camp when I was a child with him and my grandmother. So he participated at the anniversaries and so it was always like a part of my family history, this camp and the history of my grandfather.
That's very seldom.
Yeah, maybe because he survived, so that's something. And he was a communist. That was the reason why he came to Sachsenhausen in 1937. After being imprisoned in Nazi prisons, and then he came into Schutzhaft and was brought from the prison directly to Sachsenhausen, and he stayed a communist and lived in the German Democratic Republic, and so that this was a big commemoration of this camp and the Nazi crimes and communist resistance was a big part of his personal history and the political history in GDR.
So how long did he stay in Sachsenhausen?
He stayed until, from 1937 to 1942. And then he was with some other communist prisoners. He was deported into another concentration camp in Germany, south of Germany, which is called Flossenbürg. And he was part of the illegal organization of the communist prisoners here in the camp.
And how long did he stay in Flossenbürg?
In Flossenbürg, he was until he was liberated by the American soldiers in 45, at the end of the war.
So he had to stay in concentration camps for 8 years.
Yeah, and he was in Nazi prisons from 34. He was arrested in February 34.
So 11 years of his life he spent in prison or concentration camp.
Yeah, and I think he was in his 20s when he was arrested. So he stayed what for other people is the best part of their lives, when they found a family or they're young and they try to build up a life. He was in the camp. Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So you have been here with him. Did he tell you something about the camp?
Yeah, I remember some stories he told me as a kid, and it was not so much about the camp, more about the time before, when he was like in an underground communist organization and how he was arrested. And so for me it was like a adventure story he told. But yeah, he wrote like a autobiography, and so that's why I know also something about the conditions in the camp and how he survived.
Did he show you in which block he had to stay?
I can't remember in which barrack
block. Yeah,
in which block he stayed. I think he wrote it down, but I don't remember. But I know that he before the the illegal communist organization in the camp was deported, they were imprisoned in the prison camp, like in the
isolation.
The isolation block.
Ah, okay.
So I remember that we went to the cells. Is it called cell?
Yeah.
And that he was for some weeks. I think he was in a cell, isolated in the dark and tortured. And then one story I remember was that when the SS came and they told them to get on a truck, they thought that they would be deported, or that they would go with them to Station Z, which meant that they would murder them. So he told me or my family that on the truck he told to a friend or comrade that they would not accept to be murdered without some kind of resistance. So they planned that if the truck would go into a direction of the Station Z, then they would try to attack the soldiers. But they went not in this direction, but to another. They left the camp to be deported to the other concentration camp.
So, do you know what he was doing while he was here? He was probably forced to work somewhere.
Yeah, he had different works to do when he arrived in 37. The camp was not yet finished. They were still cutting down the trees in the forest to build up the camp. I know that in the beginning he had to work also in this kind of work, which was a very hard work. And he survived because of the solidarity of the other communist prisoners who tried to organize some food for the new arrivals, or for the people who were ill. They shared the food, and finally they also could manage to get him also on another work. And I know that he worked sometime in the so-called library of the camp. There was a library, but only like to show when there were some organizations coming for visiting the model camp of the SS, then they showed like there's a library and there's a hospital, and so the conditions are not so bad for the people, but of course it was fake. So but they used the library to hide some informations, to exchange informations about. So of course there were Nazi books only, but it was like a center where they could exchange some information and organize some plans and so.
Well, that's very interesting. I'm pretty sure the communists have been organized very well in general.
That's even before. So before the camps, of course, there was like a strict organization and in the underground resistance. And this is where he came from. So he knew how to organize, how to deal with organized secret plans. And a lot of the communist prisoners did this, and so I think that was an important part of the life in the camp. And the SS liked to put communists into the responsible functions in the camp, and there was always, I think, a little maybe a conflict, or they had to choose between the so-called Berufskriminelle, so the criminals, or what the SS called criminals, which that's what the communists said, who were often they would do the work for the SS sometimes if they told them, okay, you can have some more food and then you have to do this for us. So, but the problem for the SS at the same time with criminals in responsible functions was that maybe they were more corrupt also for other, for prisoners and so because they wanted to have some good structure and order into the camp, they then often choose communists who were maybe not so corrupt, and this is why a lot of communists like Harry Naujoks and so were into this responsible functions. But this was good for the communist organization into the camp, so they could manage to support each other because they were in this responsible functions.
Usually, it's very interesting how the fact that an ancestor was imprisoned in a concentration camp affected the life of the descendants. In your case, it's pretty obvious. Your grandfather was able actually to visit with you this campsite. So obviously it had an effect on you. But besides the visits with your grandfather here, what would you say are those things which affected your life, or even still maybe affect your life until today?
I think it's still a very big part of the family history, even more for his children, of course. So my mother or her siblings, but I think as a grandson, maybe I have another perspective because it's not so close, and I only knew him when I was a child. So there's more distance. Maybe I think the children, it was their father. He did talk about things, but not about everything. They knew that he was, of course, traumatized by the camp, and I think there were a lot of things that were not told because he didn't want to.
What do you think those things he did not want to talk about? What do you assume?
He was very, he had this communist idea to which he sacrificed his life. He was ready to be in communist resistance, and because he thought this would be the the idea for a better world, so for a better society. So, and then he was ready to fight against Nazis, and he was ready to ertragen, to deal with all the pain and the torture. And so because he always thought that it was for the right case, for the right thing to do. And I think also in GDR, and so this was like the things he talked a lot about. And of course he talked also about how difficult the life in the camp was, but not so much, because this was maybe too hard to do. So the focus was always more about the solidarity and how to survive, and not so much about how hard and how difficult it really was. Of course, he said that this was the hardest time you could ever imagine, but I think he focused more on the other aspect. As a communist resistant in GDR, he was honored, and he was also
he was honored. Yeah, true.
Yeah, and that's part of the identity of the GDR. Yeah, like the communist resistance against, or the anti-fascist identity of the GDR. And this was my grandfather. Yeah, and he built up, or he helped to build up this new anti-fascist state, and he was a politician also in the early GDR. And so it's the contrary of your example, and but that's also a problem in GDR, because there were some victims or groups of victims who there was like a hierarchy in the groups of victims of Nazi regime, and the highest position was for the communists, and I think in GDR the people or the state talked a lot less about other victims.
Yeah, we are at the top of Tower A, and if we look to the center of the campsite, we can see the large concrete tower with all the red triangles.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's what it was made for red triangles.
Yeah.
And I think the campsite was opened as a memorial in 1961 or something. And they started quite early with a remembrance culture, but it was quite different.
And I think in the camp, from what my grandfather wrote in his memories, there was not only solidarity between communists, there was a much larger. So for example, in his book, he wrote that I think in 1938 or something, there were a lot of so-called asocials who were imprisoned in Sachsenhausen, and he said that like the communists in the functions with responsibility, like Blockältester or Lagerältester, etc., they tried to organize, or to distribute the new arrivals, the so-called asocials, so that they were not all together in one block, but then also they tried to distribute them to other blocks to help them, or to better integrate them into the community, because that's what he wrote, that they saw that a lot of them were they were simply ill. Yeah, so they had they were alcoholic, or they had maybe a depression or something. So often they were not able to work, because they had their illnesses to handle with, and so they realized this, and they were not try to exclude them, but more trying to integrate them. But the SS they regrouped them to. So I think they had to work in a group together, or some of the so-called asocials to torture them, to give them hard work, and so the solidarity was not only from communist to communist, but also different groups, social democrats or Christians, or they had a lot. They saw that they were humans, and the SS tried to divide them. And
I'm not sure if it's in the book of Naujux that some prisoners received money from their relatives, and in some barracks it was collected by the Blockältester and divided through the numbers of prisoners, so everybody had some, because not all the prisoners received something from their relatives. So, but that was not the case in all the blocks. I think just in some. But it shows that there were several kind of ways to organize the block. Today, your grandfather, for obvious reasons, is not here, but you're here. So, why are you here, and what do you want to achieve with it?
I come here regularly. So I live in Berlin, so it's not so far. And I also became a teacher, history teacher also. So I come here also with school, with pupils or students to visit this place. And I tell them also the story of my grandfather when we're here. And I think, it's important to share this also with a personal aspect, because it was 80 years ago. For me, it's very close. It's not even 100 years, but for a lot of people, it seems so far away. And I think at this place, you can see the relevance of this history, and that, of course, these crimes can happen again. And so this is, I think, the meaning of this place. And I come here for the anniversary more for personal reasons, because I like to commemorate my grandfather and people who were imprisoned here.
Today I was talking to a survivor, and he said that he never would have thought that he actually would look forward to come back to Sachsenhausen, because he meets people here who are working very hard to make sure what happened here will be remembered. And since he said that one to me, I allow myself to say, actually, I'm also always looking forward to come to Sachsenhausen. I know that it's one of the most cruel places in the world, or it used to be one of the most cruel places. But the reason why he comes, because the people around, they know what happened, they care, and that's something I like. So that's the reason why I usually come back.
Yeah, that's true. It's good to see that there are always groups of people coming from Berlin visiting this place, and with guided tours and so on. And I mean, I went here also when I was in school, and I think when you see school classes visiting this place, sometimes you could have the impression that they don't really see that this is serious. What kind of crimes happened here, and that this is an incredible, cruel place. But when I go here with the classes, I see that they, of course, they realize, and they're interested in this story, but they have a different approach than we had when I was young, and when a lot of my classmates had grandparents who were not imprisoned in concentration camps, but who lived during the World War II. And so So of course their perspective changes and of the younger people, but I think also for them it's still very relevant, and they see it when they come here, even if they don't relate it directly to their own history.
So you're a history teacher. Do you think all students should be taken here, or should visit a campsite, a concentration campsite, or a memorial in general?
Yeah, I think definitely that should be part of every curriculum, and because you cannot teach this from books or films or something. You have to. It's always very impressive, I think, when you come here on the Appellplatz. So when you cross the gate and you come here, and I don't know, I think maybe it's just me, but the weather here is always a little bit colder than around. It's of course because it's such an open area, so there's wind, there's I don't know, there's this atmosphere with the wall and the towers that you have to experience, and of course you cannot feel like the prisoners at the time, but you get some idea of how hard the reality of the prisoners must have been just by seeing this place in life. Yeah. And that's why it's so important, I think.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sachsenhausen. A jak będę jutro wzdychał lewą nóżką, ci zawtikam. Heul, es lebe Gold, o Kampf.